Okay, so we are going to look at the team. I want you to start thinking about team and what that means, because I'm going to ask for some interaction here in a second. But we're wrapping it up, really. I only have probably one more devotion on unity. So we're kind of coming down to the end of it, pulling the pieces together. If you kind of go back to the beginning of the year, one thing that's important is each one of you are unique. You're different. But when God puts us together, we make something beautiful. This is all part of unity. What brings us together is following Christ. That's what brings us together. Without that, by our general nature, we won't be unified. And that's why Paul said to the Corinthians, be followers of me, even as I am of Christ. So it's almost follow the leader, if you will. God has given us all a purpose. Every single one of us. And it's going to lead into what we're looking at today. Unity, for those of you who've been here for a few years, unity is really love and the one another's put together. You can't have unity without love, and you can't have love and unity without the one another. So this is all connected. But last week we looked at something, and we're going to change gears here this week. One of the common things that happens is we have a tendency, sometimes, to compare ourselves to other people. And we can be jealous, or we can be discouraged. We can feel like other people, I can't play basketball as well as, I'll use people that I was in school with because it won't mean anything to you. I knew I couldn't play basketball as well as Bill Slattery. Just knew I was never gonna. I knew on cross country I would never beat Steve Rollins. I could beat pretty much everybody else, but I would never beat Steve Rollins. I knew that I couldn't sing as well as Bill Slattery. You notice the connection here. Bill was pretty good at a lot of stuff. And if I wasn't careful, I could find myself getting jealous. And that's something real. It's real in kids, and I'll tell you right now, it doesn't go away when you're adults. As a matter of fact, in some cases, I think it probably gets even worse, or it can. So contentment. And Paul, when we look at Paul in Corinthians, he kind of strings together a series of thoughts. First of all, he says that God has a plan. And he also shared it in Galatians. Before you were all born, God has a plan for your life. Now, this is a review from last week, but it's really important to have this in your head when we look at this week. So God has a plan. He said in Galatians, before I was born, God had chosen me from the womb, basically. Paul also said in 1 Corinthians that he was content. He would say it this way, I am that I am. I'm fine with who I am. His past was very shaky. He literally participated in persecution, possibly murder of Christians. I mean, it was so bad that when he became a Christian, most of the disciples of the apostles didn't want to have anything to do with him. Barnabas had to step in, but Paul had a changed heart. And he said, listen, I am what I am. God has chosen me from the life I came from, and I am what I am. And the next thing is, and if I had to change work, I'd put motivate. If I had to do that, so if you're taking notes, I'd put work or motivate. He would say in 1 Corinthians 15:10 also, that the cause of this was by the grace of God, he was motivated to work even harder. So he didn't have time to worry about how he stacked up to Peter, James, John, or the other apostles. Matter of fact, if we had time to look at Corinthians, he deals with the Corinthians getting worked up over who had led them to the Lord. I am of Paul, I am of Apollos. So he says, listen, I'm just going to work hard. And finally, he brings it back to God, and he says, but only by God's strength. This is all 1 Corinthians 15:10. Matter of fact, we could put in there, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. So this is the idea of Christian contentment. Be content with who you are. Don't worry about somebody else. Don't worry about what they do. I am not going to be ever 6 feet tall. I'm never going to be able to sing as well as Bill Slattery. I'm never going to be able to have the move he had under the hoop and things like that, you know, or whatever. When it comes to my involvement with the school, there's certain things I will do and there's certain things I'll never be able to do. And I'm content with that. And we need to be content in life. This can happen at work too, by the way. So like I said, school isn't, I'm not just talking to you guys. This is something that happens everywhere. But we're going to look at another aspect. This is all part of being a team. First of all, we are a team. So there's 3 things we're going to look at. We are a team. I need you and you need me. These are things we've kind of touched on, but we're going to get a little deeper into it. And the final one is don't judge a book by its cover. Probably phrases or expressions you've heard before. We are a team. I need you, you need me. And don't judge a book by its cover. All right, so let's dive in. I'm going to ask, excuse me, if I were to, so somebody out there is really good with the vocabulary. If you were to define team, how would you define it? How would you define team? I'm going to choose more than one, so go ahead.
A group of people or animals or something, anything that works together in unity to be able to coexist.
Okay?
People or animals working together to get done what they need to get done.
Yeah, to accomplish like a common goal. Yeah, anybody else? Okay, I thought this was interesting. I immediately wanted to do this, but when I looked at the dictionary, there are 2 definitions for team. Or 2, depends on how you use the word, maybe is the way I should say it. Is it a noun or is it a verb? What is a team? What is a team? So if you're really into English, you got to bring both of these together because you get 2 definitions, and I actually like the verb definition better than I like the noun definition. They're both good. A noun is a group of players forming one side in a competitive sport or game. Now I could, you know, there's always 4 or 5 definitions, and there's going to be another one that eliminates the word sport, but you kind of get the idea. A group of people or individuals forming one side of something, and they're competing. Team, volleyball team, basketball team. You know, there's all kinds of teams. Anybody want to guess what the verb says? I like the verb better.
Can you go back? Can you go back?
Yes.
Thank you.
You know, and while they're copying it down, yeah, and don't ever hesitate. If you're trying to copy something down, just let me know. Actually, hang on. I'm going to choose you if nobody else does. I'd like to get somebody in high school, if anybody will be bold enough. What would be a definition of team in a verb? Didn't know we were going to do English in chapel. Anybody brave enough? No. No? Okay, Sam.
People working together, in unity to coexist.
I'm not going to say anything. We're going to wait till I put it up. Anybody else want to jump in?
Okay, probably wrong.
I'm not going to say you're right or wrong. I'm going to save it. Anybody else?
To have one or more people join together.
Here is a verb. To come together as a team to achieve a common goal. Now, really, you could argue the noun and the verb, yeah, they're saying the same thing, but I like what the verb says because the verb is action. The team, the noun is just describing an object. A verb describes what a team does, to come together as a team to achieve a common goal. Let me ask a question, and I don't want anybody to shout out anything, but who has ever played on a team that wasn't functioning as a team? Yeah. Anybody, let me do it this way. Who has played any kind of team sport? Raise your hand up high. Who has been on a team that has not functioned as a team? Keep your hand up. Did anybody put their hand down? Has anybody ever been on a team that was perfect? No. No. That's just pretty common. So now that I got you thinking that way, without being specific, I do not want specific, but being generalized, what is the problem with a team when it's not functioning? Without getting personal, be general. And if you can't, don't say it.
Divinity. Like being divided.
Yep,
Like,
Conflict.
conflict. What type?
It can be personal conflict between people. It can be conflict not wanting to do what your authority says to. It can be any type of conflict.
Yep. Okay, and I'm gonna jump over to Lexi.
Pride.
Yeah, sure. And again, this is kind of answers because I don't want specifics. Go ahead.
Communication.
Communication.
having one of the teammates be like self-obsessed and only thinking about themselves.
Yeah,
Pride, yes.
pride. So
Totally different.
put all this together, and by the way, this is what can destroy a team. This is what can destroy a marriage. This is what can destroy a church. This is what can destroy friendship. Everything you said are things that can break people up. And it gets really bad with the team. And I'll share a real life example, just so you know I'm not picking on Bill Slattery. Bill Slattery was good. Matter of fact, if you're really into sports, I've got the 1981 scores, yearly scores, and you can see foul shots, the whole 9 yards, because I was the team scorekeeper, or I don't know how I got nominated for that, but I was like statistics and figures. And you'll notice something really quickly, that Bill Slattery averaged about 30 points a game. Easy. I think his average was 35 or something like that. And mine, I might have been 9 to 12, I can't remember. And I was probably second or third on the team, you know, so that shows the gap. He was way, we would score 50 points in a game, he'd have 30 points, and then the rest of the team would make up the other 20. But he was not prideful, and some of you may remember him. He actually blew my mind one day. Early in the season, I was new to the school, and I tended not to take shots. I was more defensive. I tended just to pass it off. And there was one day, he went up for a rebound, and he had a move I referred to. He would go up for a rebound, and he was a strong forward, if you will. He did a lot of body work, strong upper body. And he would go up, get the rebound, he'd go all the way down almost into a fetal position, and then he'd just plow his way right up. Usually he would get a layup and a foul, inevitably. And he was really good at that. And so consequently, the rest of us, if he went up for a rebound, I just kind of went to sleep, so to speak. And I remember one time I was about 3 feet away from him. And I was, you know, on one, kind of lined up, the hoop was right here, I'm kind of like this, and I'm watching him. He goes down to get the ball, and as he starts to come up, all of a sudden he does a bounce pass. And literally I was like, and I froze for a second. And I passed it back to him. It was just a reaction. I'd played plenty of basketball. It wasn't like I didn't know what I was doing, but I literally was like, what the heck? What is this? And he put it right back to me, and he literally, in the game, he says, drive, go for it. And I went, and I got the layup, and I got a foul. And I looked at him, and I said, what in the world was that? You always make the same move. He says, don't fall asleep. We were really good friends. He was a senior, my grade. He said, 1, don't fall asleep. And 2, he says, I can't score all the points. He says, because if you guys don't shoot, they're just going to be all over me. That's team. So he's thinking to draw the rest of us in. He was really good that way. So come together to achieve a common goal. Notice what Paul says in 1 Corinthians. We're going to start at verse 19. And he says, in a sense, he is defining a team. And if they were all one member, where were the body? So I play basketball, so I'm not as good on soccer terminology. I'm going to try to jump around different sports here. But if we had a team and we were all guards, how good is the team probably going to be? Nobody plays forward. Nobody did how to play forward. We don't have a center. We're just a team full of guards. Are we going to be any good? Oop. We're going to have to be really good at fast breaks and stuff. I mean, that's about all we can do, because we're not going to probably be good at rebounds. All right? If volleyball, you know, I don't know I watched enough games with Mrs. Ancona playing and my daughter playing, but, you know, I know this official terminology, but if we all were really good at blocking but not good at spiking, if we were all really good at serving, you know, but we couldn't block or spike, how good is the team going to be? If you just, everybody specialized on just one thing. You could say if you had a team of really, really good servers, maybe you would win every serve because you're so good at serving, the other team couldn't field you. You know, ideally, that's not a team. And you can go with any sport. It's soccer. If everybody was defensive and nobody was offensive. Or, usually what I find, and I've seen this out in the gym because I listen to you guys, there's usually debates over who's going to be the goalie and who is going to be on offense. Not all the time. I notice some of you are very content to be on the defense. And it's either, you know, it could be one of a couple of things. Maybe you just know. On basketball, I just knew I was better defensively than offensively. So I didn't, you know, that was more my focus. So what Paul is saying here is if we were all one member, if we all had the same talent, if we all had the same abilities, if we were all just cookie cutters of each other, where's the team? Where's the body? And he's talking about the body of Christ. But then he goes on and he says, but now are they many members, yet one body? So there's two things he doesn't want you to lose touch on. First of all, that we are all one member. We're all one member, but we're different, is what he's saying in these two verses. Where were the body if we all did the same thing? And then he's really saying the same thing a different way. But now are there many members, yet one body? Every one of you has a different ability. Some of you can play the piano, some of you can draw, some of you are good at math, some of you are good. I'm going to ask a question. Here's a test. I'm going to see if I get a response here. And I might get some people that will do this. Who is introverted? Raise your hand. Okay, there's 3 hands that went
I
up.
forgot what introverted was.
You're shy and you're not real comfortable speaking in public, or
You
get
don't
in
make
a group.
friends. Put your hands up.
This was a little bit of a test because, by the way,
Loudly in your
people don't believe me.
face.
I am totally introverted. People don't believe me at all. I've learned to put myself into a zone. Stuff like this really makes me nervous. We're working in the museum really makes me nervous, but I can get myself into a zone. One, I would be willing to bet somebody didn't raise their hand that is introverted. Because a lot of times introverted people, if they're really introverted, they won't put their hand up. And they think by not putting their hand up, they're not drawing attention to themselves, but I'm looking out there saying, okay, so-and-so didn't raise their hand, and I know they should raise their hand because they're very introverted. You know what? There's nothing wrong with being introverted. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. I find a lot of introverted people are very deep thinkers, as a compliment, because they tend to run things around. Those of you who know my boys, Anthony and Evan, Anthony is majorly extroverted. Evan, I was just talking with Pastor John about him. He gets so misjudged because he won't say more than 3 words together, but he writes better probably than most anybody that I know, except maybe my daughter, and she's got a master's in English. Very deep. He sent me something the other day, and I've seen him write before, and it blew me away. You would never know that of him because he's introverted. Nothing wrong with being introverted. Here's another test. Who's extroverted? Okay, extroverted people do not have a problem, usually, unless they're embarrassed for some reason, of admitting they're extroverted. There's nothing wrong with being extroverted. The world would be really, really, really challenging if everybody were introverted. And if everybody were extroverted, that would be like me going out to my New York family. I had 1st and 2nd generation Italians, and they tend to be very, very extroverted when they get together. And literally you couldn't hear anybody talk. Because everybody was talking, nobody knew what anybody was saying, and that's just the way an Italian Christmas was. And I used to go home with a headache because I just couldn't keep up with it. But okay, so the world would be pretty boring if we're all introverted or we're all extroverted. Let me get you thinking of something else, and this happened to me once. Worked at Down East for 29 years. I was going on my 30th year when Hammond bought us, and then I worked 7 years at Hammond. And I was sent to a lot of training sessions. And one of the things they would do, and I thought about doing this to you guys, is we came in, it was in Augusta, we came in, we sat down, They had these round tables. And, which was weird, because usually I was used to being in an auditorium like this, and we'd be sitting down, maybe we had a table in front of us, the speaker would speak, and we were expected to take notes and report back to our manager, showing that we were listening. And it was usually on retail and communication, so I had a lot of stuff like that. Well, this guy comes in, and there's these tables, and we're all sitting around these tables. And we all sit down, and the guy gets up, and he goes, how's everybody doing this morning? They had coffee, they had donuts, and they had all kinds of, continental breakfast kind of a thing. Everybody was in a really good mood. He said, everybody doing well? And everybody, yeah. And he says, okay, everybody's seated and comfortable. I want to be sure this is going to be a long day. I want to be sure you're comfortable where you're at. And everybody, yep, we're all set. He says, good. Before we get started, I want you to do this. Everybody stand up. Yeah, you guys. Yeah. Okay. I want you to stretch. Now, I'm not going to make you do this, but I want you to think about this, and I'm not doing this because of all you introverted people, and I know who you are. He did this to us, and I hated every second of it. I want you to get out of the aisles, and I want you to go sit with somebody else. Okay, sit down. No, I'm not going to make you do that. And I'm not going to make you do that because of the introverted people. And here's the lesson there. And he made us do this, and I ended up with a table of people that I had no idea who they were. They were coworkers of mine, but they weren't in my group, if you know what I mean. And you guys all have groups, by the way. They weren't in my group. And then he says, okay, I want you to look at the person that you're seated with, and I think that the table had like three chairs, so it was like 4 people at a table. I want you to go around the table, and I want you to tell the person 5 things about yourself, as if they never knew you. Because he knew somebody, there's going to be cases where we probably knew each other, to some level. But I was sitting with a guy who was 2 guys who were brand new employees. We had just bought a company, and they had come into it, and I literally didn't know who they were. And I was sweating bullets, because I had no way I wanted to do this. And then he proceeded to make us communicate with each other. And I literally thought about doing this, but I said, no, I'm probably going to have some anxiety attacks, because I know there's some people that would really be challenging. And I used to hate those. But if you go back to here, what Paul is saying, this all relates to what we're talking about, because we all get into our comfort zone. We all get into, and there's nothing wrong with that, we have our friends. We have those people we communicate with. We have those people we socialize with. And if you're not careful, you make a little universe and you never look at anybody else around you. At all. I'll tell you a trick. And I was going to say people, but I know I have, because I've done this a couple times, I know that some of these people are introverts, so I'm not going to point them out in particular. But I have learned that when I call people up, I try to do it in groups of people that know each other, to do the pledges. Because I know if I choose just one of you, you probably won't go. But if I choose you and your friends, like Felicity, Carrie, and Olivia, and I won't do that to you, but I might have a chance to get all 3 of you up if I chose the 3 of you. Or, Abby, Felicity, and Carrie. I have a better chance if I do that. See, because we're a body, but what we do as Christians, unfortunately, is the same thing the world does. If you look at churches, it's the same way. When the church service ends, the same people every Sunday come up and shake my hand. Or I shake the same people's hands. I'll, monkey on myself. And meanwhile, there's somebody brand new sitting in front of me, or sitting beside me, and I've never met them, don't know who they are. And what Paul is saying is, listen, we're all a body. We all need each other. But if you go to the next verse, this is something we memorized early in the year. For the body is not one member, but many. So again, he's saying the same thing. And if you look at these guys rowing, what he's saying is all these guys are a team. How many have ever watched this sport? And I am drawing a blank as to what it's technically called. But it's English. And I know it's in the Olympics, and I'm just brain cramping. It's fascinating to watch these guys. They have the real long boats, and they'll go down the channels. It's always really good still water. And
It's Battleship.
It's Battleship. Yeah, well, it could be. But in all seriousness, if these guys aren't, if you notice, they have one person that's communicating, but if they're not all in sync with each other, they're not going anywhere. They're just going to spin, you know. And this is, so if you think of that image when Paul says, for the body is not one but many members, but that all these members have to cooperate together. So if we have little groups, like, let's say two of those guys said, well, I like the guy sitting in front of me. He and I, we're going to do our own thing. We're just going to row the way we want to row, and I'm not going to worry about the guys in the front of the boat. And the guys in the front of the boat are saying, we're the leaders, we're the best, we're at the front. I could care less what these guys in the back are doing. They're supposed to follow us, so we're just going to do whatever we want. And the guy in the middle says, I don't like either one of them, so I'm just going to row my own way because I'm introverted and quiet and all this stuff. So if we're not careful, then all of a sudden the team disintegrates. Here brings us the second point. I need you, you need me. You ever stop to think about that? In the body of Christ, or in a team, it's the same thing. We all need each other. The really, really good teams are the teams that realize that from the bench player to the star pitcher, and in my case, it would have been from Steve Rollins, who's a really good friend of mine, great cross-country runner, not a great basketball player, but he was on the team, and he was usually a bench player. From Steve Rollins to Bill Slattery, we were all needed. We needed each other. We all had a purpose. We all had a role. In thinking of this, I couldn't help but think of, I'm a little bit of a baseball fan, but and I know you're not all the fans of the Red Sox, but the 1975 Red Sox went to the World Series. They lost the seventh game. They had a guy on the bench that he probably only played 40, 50 games a year out of 160 games. His name was Bernie Carbo. He was an outfielder. How many of you have heard of Bernie Carbo? Didn't expect you to, by the way. Bernie Carbo. Yeah. He would come out when one of the star players was hurt, and he'd play the outfield. That's it. Or every now and then if somebody was tired, he'd take a position in the outfield and he'd come out. Left-handed hitter. But Bernie Carbo had one thing about him. His home run ratio was really high. Now, if he played a whole year, he probably wouldn't do as well. But if you took him off the bench, he was really good. And if you know baseball, this is his talent. He was really good at coming in cold and going to the best fastball pitcher you had and cranking it. He had like 4 or 5 really good swings. And in the 1975 World Series, he had 2 home runs off the bench. Pinch hitting, late, 6th, 7th, 8th inning. They bring him in. Especially when they were playing in the National League and they had the pitcher, they'd bring the pitcher out, they put Bernie Carbo in, bam, they take him out, they put somebody else in, or they put him out in the outfield and they play games. So everybody is important. I need you, you need me. Notice what Paul says. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of thee. Nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. Now, any of you who has played on a team, I do not want any comments on this one, or even raised hands. I guarantee you have run into this at one point in time. Now, I've played on teams, I have not seen this particular situation. But you have the star player. Bill Slattery could have fallen into this category if he got really prideful about it, but he never did. He always kept it grounded. He always knew kind of what was going to happen. He knew we tended to rely on him, but he was trying to be fair about it. But Paul is saying, listen, be careful. The eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you. Now, a couple days ago, you guys didn't even know this. I've had 2 corneal surgeries. All right, I have donor cornea. They're not my corneas. Somebody passes away, just like donor hearts and all that stuff, and they were sewn in. I probably wouldn't be seeing if it wasn't for these things. My eyesight's pretty bad. That's why sometimes I have trouble focusing on something. I have really expensive contacts. I mean, really expensive contacts. I can see pretty well. I got it yesterday morning, and these things are a few $100s or more than that. I won't say how much they are. And I picked one up, and I have to fill it with saline solution and then put it in my eye. So the saline solution is actually part of the process, all right? And I put it in my eye, and I took a step out, and all the saline solution is running down my face. He says, okay, that was weird. I went back in and I repeated it. Finally figured out I can't see that well without my contacts, and I finally figured out by feeling the contact. They're very, very hard, very hard. Almost like a soup bowl. They had a hole in the middle of it, big enough you probably could have put a head of a pin through. I have no concept how that hole got there. Didn't drop it. I'm very careful with these things. I have no idea. Now, I had a backup, so I got the backup in today. But my point is my hand, if we reverse it, my hand said, we don't need the eye. That eye doesn't, well, believe me, I noticed when that eye wasn't working right. Because I can't see that well without that contact in. And it handicaps me a little bit. I mean, thankfully I had this one in. But this is what Paul's literally giving us a biology lesson. He's saying, listen, he said, the eye can't say to the hand, I have no need of you, or the head to the feet, I don't need you. But it works the same here. You guys might not think this way, but really you need each other. And you need more than just your group. I'll share something with you, and this is common for, I don't care if it's schools, churches, or teens. One of the biggest problems is somebody feels like nobody likes them. They sit on the bench, nobody communicates, they come to school, we don't interact with them, we go to church, same thing. So it's not just you guys, it's everything. What Paul is saying, listen, I need you and you need me. We all have a purpose. And he's going to build on this. He's going to keep going. Verse 22, nay, much more those members of the body which seem more feeble are necessary. This is really common with sports. Steve Rollins, or even I can say myself, I wasn't the greatest shooter in the world. I was pretty good defense, but I wasn't the greatest shooter in the world. You know, Bill Slattery could have said, listen, I really don't need you. I really don't. You might as well just stay down the other end of the court. But see, that's not being a team. And what Paul is saying is, listen, God has given every one of you a unique gift. You might have a gift that's so far in advance of somebody else, but somebody else, maybe you're a better student, you're a better artist, you're a better sports player or whatever. You're better at everything than this other person, and you kind of get this feeling of, you know, a level. And what Paul is saying here is, listen, the more feeble are necessary. We all have a purpose. Don't judge a book by its cover. And I actually forgot to bring something in, but this picture will have to do. Don't judge a book by its cover. I like geography and geology, both. And we were in Goodwill one day, and I came up. I had something in my hand, and my wife looked at me. It was a box. She goes, what are you getting? I says, it's only a buck. She says, what is it? And I turned around. It was a puzzle. Well, she was shocked because I don't do puzzles at all. She actually likes puzzles. What's it a puzzle of? I says, it's Mount Desert Island. It's a topographical map of Mount Desert Island. She looked at it. It was like 1,000 pieces, I think. She said, that's going to be really hard. I said, yeah, but I really want to try it. I want to see if I can put it together because I like maps. So I brought this puzzle home. I got it all put together. 3 pieces missing. And I was really depressed. How good is that puzzle with the 3 pieces? Does anybody like puzzles? It's not a huge thing.
Depends on what.
We'll go on vacation and Mrs. Ancona will pick up like a 5,000 piece puzzle and it will sit on the table kind of thing, or a 2,000 piece puzzle. And it will be something really hard. And it'll work at it all week. Her and Alexis. I'll get up and I'll walk over and I'll put 1 piece in and then kind of, yeah, and then that's it for me for the rest of the week because I'm done with it. But how good is that puzzle with 3 pieces missing? Anybody, it has to be a puzzle person. That really, really is frustrating. You know, I was really concerned because I knew I'd knocked the box over at one point. I searched and searched and I found those 3 pieces. And I was very happy and I put it together. What if we went through this box of puzzles and we said, I don't like all the blue ones. And I just threw them away. Anybody that does puzzles, is that? No. But can we do that with people? See, Paul says in verse 23, and those members of the body which we think less honorable. Upon these we bestow more abundant honor, and our uncomely parts have more abundant comeliness. Now this, I admit, I learned something. This last part of this verse, I didn't know this is what Paul was meaning. He's saying two things here. First of all, he says, in those members of the body which we think less honorable. So he doesn't give an examples, but it might be the fingernail. I've used that before. If you've ever lost a fingernail, believe me, it really, really hurts. Or stubbed your toe. I stepped on, how many of you have done this? I was walking outside barefoot. I like to go barefoot in the summertime, and so I can push it a little bit this time of year. And I was running outside, it was a warm day, and I stepped on a rock, a little pebble, right on the ball of my foot. Right on that, right on that ball of that foot, and I have a sore spot that's probably no bigger than a pea. How many of you think I know every single time I put my foot down? Boy, that hurts. It's just starting to go away. The ball of my foot isn't exactly the high part of my body. But when it's hurt, it throws the rest of me off. Because I can walk different. When you get older, younger people don't understand this. You walk different, and then your knee starts to hurt because you're walking different on your foot. And then the hip starts to hurt. And then the neck starts to hurt. And I didn't know that one day. I went in, my neck was really bothering me. And the chiropractor started asking me some questions. And I had done something. And he traced it back. He says, okay, it's running right up, all your joints. It's being affected by that. So Paul is kind of saying that. He's talking about like your fingernail, parts of your body that don't seem to be that big a deal. They're not important, like your brain or your heart or something like that, or your appearance, your face. It's not an honorable member. He says, upon these we bestow more abundant honor. Why? Because they're needed. And it's that way with the body of Christ. But then he goes on and he says, and our uncomely parts have more abundant comeliness. And I've always read that and maybe been guilty of not really understanding it. Literally what he is saying is, he's telling people you wear clothes for a reason. Okay? And the uncomely parts, you wear clothes. All right? So he's saying, listen, you are trying to accentuate yourself and how you, by getting a stylish shirt or a nice dress or putting makeup on or whatever, you're trying to enhance what you want people to see. Sometimes it's ladies' eyes. Actually, I've had, when I was younger, I used to have people say to me, you have beautiful eyes. Things like that. Actually, I told the basketball team I had great legs. That didn't really impress me at all. In any case, we have this tendency of trying to hide things we don't like and then get people to look at what we do like. But here's what happens. We do it when we're on the playground. We do it in the classroom. We do it with other people. We have people that we don't associate with as much. And so we tend to put people in categories, and we tend to, and going back to this session I went to, this is why this guy told us all to get up and move. Because he knew what he was going to do. He would probably lose most of us because we were going to be too focused on our friends, on the people on our table. And he was trying to draw home a point. So as a closing thought, we'll just show you this. These are 4 coins. 3 are Roman. And the one on your far left is a Jewish coin. So these are all about 2,000 years old. Actually, the Jewish coin is a little older than 2,000 years old. These all date 1st century. And the Roman coins, if I were to give them all to you and you had them in your hand, you'd probably be drawn right to the biggest one because it's really, really heavy. You might like some of the detail on the middle too. The Jewish coin is actually broken, which I knew when I got it. The Jewish coin actually is in the Bible. It is what is referred to in the Bible as a widow's mite. That is, it's called a pruta, that's what they called it, P-R-U-T-A-H. It is not very impressive, it is very small, it is not worth hardly anything in a monetary value. But Jesus said, and he looked up and he saw the rich men casting their gifts into the treasury. And he saw also a certain poor woman casting in thither 2 mites. And he said, Of a truth I say unto you, that this poor widow hath cast in more than they all. For all these have of their abundance cast into the offering of God. But she of her, let me look back here, penury, hath cast in all the living that she had. See, we can judge other people. We can feel like they don't have a lot to contribute. We can think all kinds of things. Think about a team, the things that you've experienced on a team. But God doesn't, thankfully, judge a book by its cover. He looks right here. And he sees value with the person internally. And so that's kind of the challenge. And this is something that, again, this is something we all struggle with. Paul says in Ephesians 4:13, and this is again, this is kind of a definition of a team. Till we all come in the unity of the faith. And I'll just stop right there. Till we all come in the unity of the faith. That's what God wants to see. God is looking down at us, just like you look at the volleyball team, the basketball team, whatever it is. And he wants to see us functioning as a team. And really, if you get right down to it, unity in the Bible is nothing more than team. Or a definition of what a team should be, I should say. So just kind of something to think about. 2 things to worry about on a team. Last week we looked at the person who is jealous, looking at somebody else. And this week we're looking at the other person who looks at other people and says, they're really not important. All right, Heavenly Father, I thank you again for this lesson. I know it's challenging. I know I can do it. We all can do it. We can be comfortable with people around us, and we can, maybe not even intentionally, we can just not focus on that individual in the class or that individual in the workplace that maybe we're shy, maybe we're reserved, but we just don't pay them any mind. Help us to be more considerate of others and realize that in your eye, you judge the heart, and they have great value. And you have a plan for their life just like you do for us. And we pray this all in your name. Amen. All right.